End of Rugrats. Do not research. The End of Rugrats is a story that is known as a time when Nickelodeon was doing a Rugrats marathon and accidentally aired what was meant to be the original intended end of the show overnight. We of course know that the show got pushed on later seasons. It was meant to end season 3, as we said, but they had to do more, and originally they had an end in mind. And due to the backstage drama and the fatigue and the stress working on all of that and then doing more, it caused them to make a more strange and dark ending. And this accidentally got aired overnight once. Storyboard Jam shows some assets of what was meant to go into this ending. And this is definitely real and not just some weird humorous creepypasta that was put on this for fun. Give me a break. Real life Mr. Tippy intended audience. Okay, so when I first learned about the real life Mr. Tippy merch, it confused me because I didn't know if it was like an actual sippy cup or not at first, and that made me ask, like, well, if it's an actual sippy cup, then who's gonna use it? Because a child would either be too young to understand the reference, like, even back then, or they would be scared of it from seeing him on the show. And if you're, like, an adult who bought it because you're a fan, you're not gonna be drinking off a sippy cup, chances are. Well, I mean, looking at this confusingly, which just adds to the intended audience thing more, apparently it's a coin bank. I don't know how you get the coins out, but who's gonna want to use it like that? Like, again, you would just have to, like, be, like, a fan of the show for it. Like, even back then, I don't see why somebody would want this, and no wonder it's so fucking rare now. I mean, you can go see it for yourself for only $3,000, and yeah, it just raises the question, like, what exactly did they have in mind when they were making this? Like, did they plan on it being a highly valued collectible piece of merch later on? Ooh. Shared Nightmares. Yeah, this is another one that's just taken directly from the Super Mario 64 iceberg, but hey, it's fun, it's interesting, and it works here too, and yeah, I mentioned Nightmare Fuel in the first layer. Like, we all had moments, I'm sure, that people were all scared of. Whether it be aliens, or some weird trippy fever dream sequence, or Angelica's almost brother, what was the deal with that, or something that bothered me, like the idea of it the most as a little kid would have been, like, down the drain, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people had, like, vague nightmares of just, like, being in these settings themselves, or, like, catching it on TV that's way darker, and there's probably ones, like, that reoccur through different people that are, like, basically the same. Cynthia's sprite changing in Search for Reptar. So this is a really interesting and odd, eerie one. So, as I've kind of mentioned before, like, unfortunately there's not that much, like, documentation on the oddities in Search for Reptar. Like, the closest thing you get is fucking Oniplays doing it, but in there, when they were trying to find Cynthia at the end of 7 Voyages of Cynthia, they got to the final area, and it seemed normal. However, like, the music wasn't playing for whatever reason, and they couldn't find her anywhere, like, assuming, like, the game just glitched and didn't load her for some reason. And after they failed and respawned, it seemed more normal, like music was playing again, and they did end up finding her that time. But the oddest thing was that Cynthia's sprite changed from this, like, kind of screaming thing into this. Yeah, creepy to find, isn't it? Like, that would scare the shit out of a lot of kids if it happened to them, I'm sure. And yeah, like, it's not just the face going off though, but it's like other things, like the feet are more simple, and like the belt is different. It reminds me of like a corruption you would see on Fine Sauce, but I don't see how the sprite can like distort into this on its own. Like, they're both so different, like, even as like some random glitch, and why would this glitch even occur? And I don't know, they don't even talk about it much in the series. Like, you hear them, like, react to it, but then that's it, and it's just such, like, a strange and weird, eerie mystery that has nothing on it. Barbecue Story Woman Apparition. So we talked about her, too, earlier in the series, and how she was dismissed, and seemed like she was meant to be part of the group. Well, what if she was always still trying to be a part of everything? And maybe she's still trying to claw her way into the show somehow as another one of the adults. And maybe as a kid, you could have seen her sometimes here and there on TV during reruns, but you just never noticed, or you never thought anything of it back then because you were too young, or maybe you were tired, and yeah, who knows? It's hard to say when exactly she would appear. You would think that her presence would be strongest when in the group with the adults, but maybe she could also just suddenly appear sometimes in the background of a doorway while the babies are alone. And that does it for the first, pretty spooky later, aside from the last one, sort of. Stay tuned where it gets even more strange and eerie for the final two, Under the Iceberg.